Well, hello. Welcome to Richmond. Is this anybody's first? Is anybody
It's
first
my
time?
first time.
First time.
Yeah, and it's
I've
cool.
been to Richmond before, but it was when I was really young. I've got family out here on the East Coast,
Okay.
so but this is my first time here for anything like this. It's awesome.
Yeah. So welcome. The cool thing about this show is that a lot of the attendees that come here, a lot of the fans aren't even from Richmond. That they're coming from anybody out of state here, as if I could actually see you.
Very cool. I can
right.
see them.
3 or 4 hands. went
Right
up,
there.
I think.
I saw some
think we
hands
should-
up there.
I should take this mic out to the main room and say, "Hey, we're having a panel."
We're-
I
right.
bet they don't even know.
Right.
We should let them know. Somebody go tell somebody.
Tell a friend. Everybody text somebody who you know and tell them to come in here. You mentioned, when you were young. I want to talk about that and getting involved. You were 6 years old when you moved to California.
Yeah, I started my career right before I turned 7 years old. We moved out to California. Initially, we were coming out for 3 days. First day, I was going to meet with some agents. Second day, we were going to go to Disneyland. Third day, some sightseeing, and then we were going to drive back home. I came from Arizona, so it was
Were you already acting in Arizona?
it was the very start of things. My grandmother owned a restaurant called Lakeshore Inn. It was up near a chain of lakes that was really popular for filming. And I was a 6-year-old boy that would get into trouble if I did not have tasks. So I would often help, roll silverware or drop bread at tables or whatever, child labor, but basically just to keep me out of trouble. And I ended up meeting a bunch of producers and directors from Fox. They were doing a project out there. And they said, he's really precocious. He's a good listener. He speaks well. Have you ever thought about putting him into acting? My mom said, no, not really, but I had expressed an interest in trying to become an actor. So she got some information about, how to get headshots and how to meet with an agent and how to do that. And we came out, we met with some agents. One of them said, he'll work if you keep him out here. So instead of going to Disneyland, we went and found an apartment.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, I booked my first job. It was Aunt Jemima Syrup.
Wow.
2 weeks after that was another commercial. And then eventually I ended up going to Disneyland. I think it took like 6 months. But that was how it started. And it was literally just these series of connections that all just kind of went right. And never really looked back. So.
That's awesome. I like the fact that you went out there with no previous experience and then got a booking within 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was
That's
absolutely
unheard of.
miraculous. Yeah, and it's one of those things too where so many people who go to LA to try to become an actor, you don't realize that even if it goes well, it's usually 6 weeks to 3 months before you even could potentially book a job, and then it's 2 to 3 weeks after that you work it, and then another 6 weeks after that you finally get a paycheck.
Or longer.
Or longer. So, it just happened to work out that there was that available support structure to make it work for me when I was that age.
Who is the agent, can I ask?
That was Mary Grady.
Mary Grady. My brothers were with Mary Grady.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Small. Do you find that it's a small world like that?
It is a small world around the whole world. Yeah.
Especially within the entertainment industry, it's everybody is connected to somebody else, and this other person from this other thing, and that's how the work used to happen. It was who you know. And now
And it
it's
still
a little bit
kind of
different,
is.
but
Yeah.
you still have to have somebody who listens to the self-tapes that you send in.
Or who knows you because you're so popular as a, what do you call them, influencer or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Katie says, Bradley, you guys started, do you prefer Bradley?
I prefer Bradley.
Bradley got started when he was 6. What age did you get involved in the entertainment industry?
I didn't get involved until I was in college.
In college?
Yeah. I wasn't interested. I never took acting. I never did theater.
So how do you go? Yeah. So how do you go from not even interested into a career?
I didn't say I wasn't interested, but I didn't think it would be, a career. You go from that because when you turn 18 and people tell you you still sound like you're 12, then you say, well, maybe I'll pursue this and see what I can do. And, you know, so much is, I don't know, like you, just meeting people, fate, encouragement, being at the right place at the right time, being willing to try something different. You know, I think my buddy Will Ryan, I always used to say, how did you know you wanted to become a voice actor? And he would say, when the check cleared. So, you know, it's kind of the same. I was actually, this is a good story. I came home from college at Christmas and went to help my uncle who had a hairpiece shop in Beverly Hills. So for 2 weeks, I filled in and was like his receptionist. And one of the newscasters in LA who wore a hairpiece saw me, met me, and said, you know, you might be good at this, and told me to meet somebody in Hollywood. And then it just kind of, you know, kept incremental things after that. My stepmother, because I grew up in LA, so my stepmom, everybody's in show business, or hair business. She was working at the salon my uncle's wife worked at in Beverly Hills. Maurice José was and Noel Blanc used to get his hair done there. And Noel was making a movie for the Shriners Burns Institute. And I don't know how they got talking. I don't know. But she must have told him about me, and I think I talked to him on the phone because what he needed was a little girl screaming because she gets burned in the bathtub. And he asked, you know, I need somebody to do this. So I was like, okay, and went to his house. He had a home studio back then, and this was, you know, late 70s, early 80s, and saw the film and did the scream, and he's like, okay, thank you. And I was probably 18, 19 years old, and I hadn't really made a career out of it yet. And we walk out of the studio, and there's Michael Douglas sitting on his couch with his tennis racket and says, okay, Noel, are you ready to play yet? I'm like, this is so weird. And I went home, but eventually it just got good.
Just got good.
Yeah, I actually got a degree in broadcasting.
Oh, okay. I was actually
And
talking about that
I
today.
thought I might be a producer.
Oh.
And I was in San Francisco, but when I graduated, I had agents up there. That's how I got into. It's so funny because you worked with Robin Williams, and at the time I was going to college, and everybody was riding the bus in San Francisco, and Robin was doing stuff at the Holy City Zoo with Paula Poundstone and a bunch of other comedians, and we were all, I mean, he was older than me, but anyway, not that much. But when I graduated, I said, well, now what? And the agent said, you need to go to LA because that's where animation is, because in the early 80s, that's the only place. And so I thought, oh, I just left there. But okay, I'll give it 2 years and see if I can make a living. So short story long, 2 years went by, I was able to make a living, and that's the end of the story.
That's awesome. Now, you know, the name of this panel is Voices of Disney, and you both of you guys have, you know, prolific careers, amazing characters. Did you grow up as Disney fans?
Oh, yeah. Who didn't?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's canon for childhood, isn't it?
I think some of my earliest memories of watching TV or movies were Disney-based. It was the Disney movies, the VHS and the clamshells.
Right.
Somebody out there knows.
Right.
Okay, I can beat you. I have
Okay.
Mary Poppins and Uncle Remus on LPs.
There you go.
We would listen to records, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's Disney has not always, obviously, but since, you know, the 50s, been a huge part of every generation's childhood. And when I was a kid, I didn't realize how important some of the things I was involved with were going to be and how long they were going to last. If you had asked 7-year-old me if I would still be talking about something that I did 30 some odd years later, I wouldn't have believed you. Yeah, you know. But it's been an amazing journey, and it's some of the strangest things that I've ever done have come out of voice acting. You're talking about, you know, the girl getting burned. I did 9 days of voice work in the background of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
The movie Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
So all of the screaming, all of the, you know.
We call that ADR,
Yeah,
looping. You
ADR,
must have
background
been with a
voices.
group, right?
Yep, I was with a group, and I did 9 days on that. And that was, I spent a day in Michael Bay's pool. You know,
wow.
just swimming around and screaming that they were coming again and shooting at us. And then the police came and shut us down.
I think people don't understand that, you know, voice acting, you can do a lot of different things as a voice actor.
Right,
you know?
absolutely.
I mean, we'll get back to focusing on Disney, but there's looping, there's the loop group stuff, there's books on tape, there's records, there's educational things, toys, you know, of course, besides radio and television and film. Yeah.
I want to talk about, you know, you mentioned, you know, if you would have told your 7-year-old self, when did you realize that that project, Beauty and the Beast, was big, that it was something that was going to have a legacy?
Well, I think I realized that Beauty and the Beast was going to be huge probably after I'd been recording it for 3 to 6 months. Initially, Chip only had one line.
Oh my goodness.
It was Mama, there's a girl in the castle. That was the only line Chip had. And the rest of that character was going to be a music box that just played chimes and communicated through music.
Oh.
But Don Hahn, who was the producer, realized that there was not really a kid's window into the story. There was no child in the movie. And so to make it more relatable, they kept adding more stuff.
And that
me.
just goes to show that just because you have a script that gets greenlit, then once you get to the set, it's still dynamic and still changing, and people are seeing how is this working, and obviously you charm the heck out of them.
Well, and especially Disney. Disney has always been really good at including the actor in the character. It's not just the script, it's not just the animators, it's a very collaborative medium. They film a lot of times the actors doing their bits, and then they use that capture of the expressions and the facials.
Do you see yourself when you watch? Yeah.
And they use that to create the character. So many pieces of what Chip became was just me. It was weird little isms, or it was stories that I would tell, or it was silly, funny things that happened in the booth that then became part of who Chip is always going to be.
That's so cool. I started on the Disney Channel. I was Dumbo's voice for Dumbo's Circus.
For Dumbo's Circus.
Yes.
I mean, I love Jim Cummings was
that was
involved in
his
that.
first show.
His first show, yeah. So like,
yeah,
I mean,
it was so cool. I was gonna say I don't get to see my face in an animatronic because that was live action. And after we did that, and we did about 163 I don't know, did anybody ever see Disney's Dumbo Circus? You did?
Dumbo.
Well, that's our show for today, boys and girls. I hope you liked it. They decided, they had a continuity person who said, well, Dumbo didn't speak in the movie, and he shouldn't have ever spoke, and Dumbo will never speak again. So I believe I'll be the only person who ever voiced Dumbo. Yeah. But of course they've locked it up. No one can see it, so it doesn't matter anyway at this point. But
I think based on your answer, Bradley, I think I know the answer, but has there been a character that you have brought to life that you found to be you, that you found, you're like, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing, I get this character, this is me?
I think, like what Bradley said, there's a little bit of you in every character that you do anyway. And are you talking just Disney?
No, any.
Well, I play a character named Connie Kendall on Adventures in Odyssey. Yeah. And we're kind of one and the same, I would say. Pretty close, the same, but you do bring yourself. Even when I was Sunni Gummi, you have to bring your own, take on things when you're reading. But yeah, definitely Connie and I You seem to be familiar with that.
Yes, I mean, I'm a huge animation fan, you know, so, you know, that kind of was really my childhood, you know, and there's, I feel like there's no, I mean, there's cartoons.
Well, it's a radio drama.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we've done over 1,000 episodes, so
Right.
I've been playing the same person for 38 years.
But, you know, I feel like over, you know, my life, like listening to voices, whether they're in my head or has been something that, you know, whether it is, you know, animation, radio, podcast, going back to, you know, before I was born, but like, you know, the world's radio broadcast, right? I feel like those allow the imagination to run way more than live action television movies.
Well, and I think it's really audio, because even though if you saw Chip without hearing the voice, it wouldn't be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is very intimate. Voices, sounds are very intimate. We internalize them. That's what makes them known to us. So yeah, it's really interesting how we process the things that we hear and what they mean to us as people. I mean, I'm sure you've heard someone's voice. I mean, we're not immune to going, you know,
Right,
it's
100%.
We're also, most of us are geeks as well. We are huge fans of the medium. We're not just necessarily participants. And I think that that's a huge part of it. If you don't appreciate the work of others, it makes it really hard to do good work.
And I think you don't even realize you're that until you get the opportunity. Like, until I started working in voiceover, it's like, I know all the references. I know these things from just growing up and, you know, imbibing on media, you know, viewing, being a viewer. And so you don't realize how much you've internalized till all of a sudden it has to come out of you. I did that twice now.
It's almost like you talk with your hands.
And I know. People, I coach, you know.
She's animated.
Like you said, and you know what? It's so funny. It's like it was maybe even less than a year ago when I went, oh, what does animate mean? Move.
Right.
It means move. That's, you know, and you can't do it without moving.
Do you feel like when you're in the booth that you
have to.
that you emote with your?
You absolutely have to.
I didn't learn until I was older how important the clothes that I wore were, because I didn't realize that some clothes are loud.
Don't wear nylon. Don't
This
wear
is a
jangly
quiet-
jewelry.
These aren't quiet, but this is a very quiet outfit.
Pretty quiet. Don't wear a starched shirt.
I never thought about. I mean, yeah.
And also, if you're actually doing voice work, you can't wear hats. 'Cause
Not
it-
forward anyway, because
affects
it'll
the
it'll
sound
muffle your
bouncing into
voice.
the
You
mic.
gotta open it.
And especially
all
if you
straight.
are a more animated voice actor. I always have been. And
You know, it's so funny because did you work with Kimmy Robertson in the booth when you did Beauty and the Beast? Because she was a feather duster,
no,
I
most
think.
of
All by yourself, right?
I was. That's what I wanted to ask. Was you know, Beauty and the Beast done solo or roundtable?
Beauty and the Beast was primarily solo. There was a
Okay.
few sequences that were
Disney
recorded together.
typically does that. It's
It
not
gives them
like
more
Saturday
control.
morning.
Yeah. And so, like, some of the sequences with Belle and Beast, or Belle and Gaston for chemistry, were done together. Some of the songs were done together, but most of the voice work was all done isolated.
But when you do Saturday morning cartoons, we generally are all in the booth together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was when I worked with Jim. I was the original Tails in the Saturday morning cartoon, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes.
And Christine Cavanaugh was part of that cast, Rob Paulson, Jim Cummings, like,
That sounds like most of the cast of Darkwing Duck.
yeah, it really was. And it was that same group of people that already had this dynamic, and it was done at the round table, or however you want to call it. But basically, we'd go through the entire script. And sometimes it would be one person talking to themselves for 3 pages, because he's all 3 voices.
Which
Generally
could be Jim. Yeah.
Generally Jim, sometimes Rob.
It's so funny, I forget how many shows I did for Disney till I'm sitting here. Yeah, but yeah, I was Hawker Buttlefoot on Darkwing Duck, too. And Sunny Gummi. Yeah.
As you mentioned that, and I look out and I can barely see people's faces, but they're like, "Whoa, wait! Like you're that what voices, what characters has it been that people are surprised when they find out that you do those?"
Well, I worked on the Muppet Babies. Anybody watch the Muppet Babies?
So a lot of people are surprised that I did Baby Rowlf.
Yes. I did not realize that. That's awesome.
Surprise! Also, I dubbed the voice of the Maharaja in Temple of Doom. That's my voice. Yes. Please listen. Wait, what did it say? Anyway, it's the tunnel on the left. Yes. I too have heard the rumors of the Thuggy cult. I thought the stories were told to frighten children. Yes.
And you did Richie Rich as well, is that correct?
I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Richie, that was a huge.
But that was Deke.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm confused here. It was a Disney panel, right?
Well, if we can, we talk about it. We can talk about anything. We can talk about anything.
Yeah, we did that.
I'm trying to think if there's a voice that I've done that would be surprising. I think, and I don't know that I can do it right now. I'm still,
Right.
I did a lot of voiceover coverage for some video games.
Yeah.
And one of my favorites was, it was Good Cop, Bad Cop in the Lego video game. And it was literally, I was a huge fan of The Matrix, so I went, okay, it's just going to be Agent Smith. It's just Agent Smith. I don't really, because Hugo Weaving did both voices, so it worked. And I was shocked that they thought I was a close enough voice match to do that. But I'm like, all right, let's make it happen. So that was a lot of fun. That's probably the one that's the most outlier from any of the voice
I just thought of something else, but I don't think they're using me anymore. But if you've been to Orlando, the Galaxarium, for the first couple years, I was the voice of World Mind. In the queue, yes. Welcome, Terrans, to the land of Xandar.
They still do. Yes.
I think it's somebody else.
You think it's somebody? Oh, do you think that
I've heard I've been replaced. I don't know. Oh well, that happens. Hey, get used to it.
Another interesting voice thing. In It's Tough Being a Bug, that interactive 4D show that ran at both parks for a while, I was the stagehand bug.
Oh,
Target's ready, flick.
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about fan interaction, and you have that opportunity, and you don't know when you're standing behind. You're got a mic, it's standing here, and you're just talking, and then years later, perhaps even decades later, somebody comes up to you and tells you how much that character, that show, meant to them. What is that like for you to hear that?
Weepy. I mean, it moves all of us. Even talk to anybody. I talk to Jim. I talk to Rob. We all it's just amazing, because you don't know. You're in there. You're just working.
Well,
Yeah.
And that's what I was telling one of the fans at my booth. They said, I come home every day and watch. I go, well, I just went to work, but I didn't know who was watching until you grow up and tell us your stories. And that's why it means so much to us to come here and to hear that, because we don't know what's going on at your house,
I say this almost every year, or almost every convention I do. I come to these things to tell stories and to talk to people.
And to hear
answer
your
questions.
stories.
I was at one, it was a very small event. It was at a store near San Diego. And I had a woman come up to me, and we were talking for a while, and then she showed me a tattoo that was on her calf. It was the Mickey head made out of puzzle pieces, 5 puzzle pieces. She and her 4 adopted siblings, I wish I could remember the woman who adopts them name, but I can't offhand. All of them were on the spectrum, and they were the chipped kids. I made them feel like they were okay, even though they were broken.
Oh,
I lost it.
wow.
I was just having a conversation, and I lost it, because 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old me didn't have a clue that 30 years later, somebody was having a rough time as a kid and made it through because.
And we hear that a lot from people who came home and that's all they had was the shows that they're watching and things that we don't think of when we're doing the scripts. That you just never know what it's going to mean to somebody. You know, Disney pretty much actually owns just about everything I've done. They haven't put it out on DVD or on TV, but they own it now. And even it's funny, Dungeons and Dragons is a show I did, and I was Sheila's voice, and people, you know, tell me things like that I never thought of. I was still pretty new then too. You know, she was strong, but she was nice. I saw you didn't have to be tough to be a nice person. I'm like, wow, never occurred to me, you know, or just reading the script, but. You know, you never know. It's a hand. I believe it's a hand of God working in different ways for different people.
Yeah.
By the way, if you guys have any questions, we have a microphone right there. So if you guys feel like you guys have some questions before we head out of here, now Bradley, I want to talk to you a little bit more about growing up. When I say growing up, I mean again, you had that voice of you were a kid.
Were you under contract with Disney?
For Beauty and the Beast specifically, yes.
But not all the other things, because you did a lot of it.
But the other stuff is just literally we get hired for different jobs as we went through.
Now, going through puberty and a voice change, that could be very detrimental for somebody in voice work, right? So how do you transition but still try to keep some of those same jobs?
Well, I mean, as an example, the voice of Chip was offered, or the role of Chip was offered to me again for the sequel, for Enchanted Christmas. And I went in the booth and I tried real hard. But I could not get my voice to the right pitch and the right tempo and the right texture and still maintain character. I could do one or the other, but I could not do both. My voice had started to change too much. So they brought in a then unknown actor named Haley Joel Osment to cover the voice. But what was interesting is, as a result of that audition, I ended up doing the last 6 episodes of the Little Mermaid animated series because that actor had aged out of his voice. And it happens, especially for, young boys in the business. At a certain point, you cannot do the voice you did at 9. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you just can't.
There's also a certain naivete, something at a certain age that once you get past that, it's hard for you to be as cute as you were when you were 6, let's face it.
Well, thank you, but yes, it's not just the voice, it is definitely the character and the person that you are as well. And so what ends up having to happen is you have to find the other roles. You have to find either roles that can grow with you, which a lot of times happens, or a role that you can take for a little while that somebody else did, like I did with Little Mermaid. And then, Tails was a voice that carried me through part of my teen years. I was the Saturday morning cartoon show version, and that carried me for 2 or 3 years. His voice changed quite a bit, but I was able to maintain that Tails was still way past cool. But these, it's like any other thing that you're doing as a teenager. You have to realize that you cannot do what you did. You have to do something different, something better. You have to grow. And, whether that's the sport that you're involved in, whether that's your education, whether that's, voice acting, you have to evolve as a teenager. You don't have a choice.
And speaking of evolving, I want to talk a little bit about to both of you evolving in the industry, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera as well. Both of you have, participated in that. Do you prefer to try to be behind the camera, or do you like being in front of the camera, in front of the mic?
I'm not an on-camera person. He is. I've always been behind the mic.
Right.
behind the camera, although, and it's so weird, I kind of thought when I got older I might start doing on camera, and I'm not going to tell you what it is right now, but I'm working on a pilot with somebody, and he asked me to read the pilot, and I'm playing like this, I'm a talent agent, like this. Come on, you go. They're waiting for you. Get over there right now. And the director says, we're actually going to try some sort of Roger Rabbit type stuff. And so we want you to do that on camera. And I went, do I have to memorize these lines? Really? Are you? No, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So when I get home next week, we're gonna do it. So if it sells, you'll know what it is. If it doesn't, you don't need to know.
As far as what I've done behind the camera, I've always been a very creative person. I've always loved making projects, and I realized that as I got older and as the industry sort of shifted, I wasn't able to do that as much. So I started making my own stuff. I worked with a friend who wrote a solid script, and I directed and produced, and found out I've got some decent chops with a camera, and so that is something that I have developed as a desire to create. And it's not necessarily that I'm good at it. I just really like doing it.
Yes.
You know what, Milo? My husband's going to kill me if I don't say this. I actually have a podcast show on YouTube and Patreon called Tell You Later. So I am on camera, but I don't think about it that way. I am. We got like 4 seasons, maybe 5, and I started it with Will Ryan.
Come on, get your phones out.
Yeah, watch the Tell You Later show. Tell You Later on YouTube. So yeah, we're still doing it. We kind of stopped putting it on YouTube and put a lot on Patreon, and now I'm uploading more on YouTube. But I have voice actors on the show, and I'd like to pick different kinds of interesting people. But Kimmy, who is a friend of mine from Odyssey, she's been on Kimmy Robertson and Townsend Coleman, different friends. So it's fun. So yeah, I guess I am on camera. My husband can say, you are on camera. I'm like, well, I guess I am, but it's not the same as
it's close.
Cameras driving around on things and telling you to do this and that, because yeah, hi.
Hey, so you guys are raising interesting questions of transition from broadcasting to internet production. I know there's a singular word for digital production, where with broadcasting, it's like it's all one way, isn't it? Whereas with digital production, it's 2-way. And like, how do you deal with that difference? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm guessing your question is what's the difference between dealing with the more collaborative medium of visual entertainment rather than audio only?
No, well, it's not just that. It's you probably know because you started broadcasting that the way broadcasting works is you do your thing, and then the audience sees it months later, and there's no interaction.
Right.
But with the internet, that interaction is practically instantaneous. And how do you deal with that change? Do you think it's a positive change, a negative change, or is it more like a 6 1 half times the other sort of thing?
I think they're 2 different things. I mean, it's like talking to you here and then, but it's nice, I think, to hear right away.
To get that feedback right away, like you do in your podcast, and that night you see the comments, but doing a show, you don't see it.
I can see how it can be unhealthy.
Absolutely.
Actually, because
focus on,
we were just focused on the work. We don't hear anything till a year later or whatever, and then you're already on to something else. That's why when people would say, "What are you working on?" If I tell you what I'm working on, you won't know because it isn't going to be out for 2 years. And if I tell you, what's on now, I did it 2 years ago. So,
I think a big piece of it too is, and this goes for anybody who produces any content. Don't read the comments.
Just
don't do it.
don't read the
Don't do it.
reviews.
I mean, there's a lot of valuable information out there. You want to be able to communicate with your audience. You want to be able to give your audience what they want. But what I've done, I've helped some people produce some podcasts and stuff like that, is have someone who you trust read those comments, distill them into a constructive criticism, and then recreate, and then create more content. If you read it yourself and you're trying to please everyone, you will burn out, you will lose your desire to create, and trolls suck. They just do, and they're out there everywhere. The only way to shield yourself is to just not read the comments.
Yeah, I think, I've always sort of been oblivious to stuff like that. Even, I think people used to make fun of my voice growing up, but I didn't get it. So I guess I'm happy about that,
Right, absolutely.
Why was my nickname Mouth? I don't know. Whatever. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Hi, you have a question?
Yes. So we hear it all the time in interviews with childhood actors, how later in life they start to say how hard it was maintaining actual dealing with family, having friends, having a life. Is that any different with childhood voice actors?
Less so.
I would say,
So much and stuff?
because so much of my career was both on camera and voiceover, I can't say that I didn't have the pressures of the on-camera part. I will say that the pros for me outweighed the cons. Not that there weren't negatives or pressures or stresses, because there were. There's something very heavy about realizing at 11 years old that the thing that you love to do makes or breaks whether or not your family eats.
Wow, that is heavy.
I mean, it wasn't quite that bad. It wasn't like, if I don't work, we don't have anything. But being aware that the income I was making allowed us to be more comfortable and happier. I was stable without working. But knowing that I could have a better life by doing this thing that I loved, I created that pressure on myself. And that wasn't necessarily just voiceover, it wasn't necessarily just on camera, that was just being young and earning money. That's a challenging thing to do. Anytime you're dealing with money in a relationship, whether it be your spouse, whether it be your family, your kids, and the family you're raising, or whether it be the family that's raising you, if you're bringing in money, that can create tension. And that's where I think a lot of childhood actors ran into problems with their interpersonal relationships. I still have a pretty solid relationship with my family. My mom and I don't talk about money, but we still have a good relationship. And so I don't know if that necessarily answers your question. I don't think it made it, I think it is easier as a voice actor than it would have been if I was just a voice actor. I think it would have been easier because there is less travel, because the auditions are a little simpler. And it's a slightly different structure, I guess, for lack of a better word.
I wasn't a child actor, but I coach kids sometimes now. And I think that kind of the other question before, back in the day, 40 years ago, nobody knew who you were when you were a voice actor. You go play ball, you could do whatever, and they were kind of separate things. But it kind of concerns me because now everybody has to be seen and do their own the social media. And there's one kid that I've been coaching, and I just really kind of rubs me the wrong way, or maybe I'm too old to process it. But I know his dad or somebody's posting things about jobs he's doing, and then they'll tag me like I'm supposed to share this, like because I coached him twice, somehow I have some investment.
Right.
And I don't, and I just think and most kids do it because they like it, just like Bradley's saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to get my son in commercials, and they rolled him a ball when he was 2, and they said, roll it back, and he said, no. And I went, okay, we're done. But some kids really love it, so I know this kid likes it, but I think it's a lot to put the social media, it's a whole other layer.
Whole other layer.
I will also say that being able to do something you love, you'll do better. If you like it, you'll do better. A kid who does not want to be an actor will not be an actor, no matter how hard their parents push them, no matter how hard they try. You might get a job. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to do it well or do another one. You know, so if it doesn't come from inside you, doesn't matter how many outside forces there are on you, you're not going to be able to do it.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you. All right, we have time for one last quick question here. Hello, I think I see you back there. There we go.
Nice to meet you guys. Katie, you came from the world of 80s Saturday morning cartoons. You get to work on legends like Mel Blanc, Don Messick, Did they give you some advice?
No. No. All I got, one of my first shows was a show called Pandemonium that no one saw. And I was like, Neil Ross was in it. He was closest to my age, and he was like 10 years older than me. And everybody else were these old comedians, really. And Jesse White just used to say, keep your day job. And that was about the only advice they gave me.
I did get one of my favorite pieces of advice from Jim Cummings, actually. He said that one of the things that he has had to remember is that no matter how different the voice is, no matter how different the character is, it has to be him. You have to find out what makes you you, what makes you different, and you have to include it in everything you do. And that's why if you listen to everything Jim does, it is amazingly different across the board. You know, Tigger is a completely different character from Fat Cat, or, you know, any of these other thousands of roles that he has done. But they're all him. And if you listen carefully enough, especially in the characterization, not necessarily in the voice itself, but in the way the lines are delivered, in the energy of it, it's Jim, and you can tell.
And that's, yeah, I mean, you bring, I think when I tell people, look, we're all going to audition all the time. That's a job. But there's some parts that you just really relate to. And those are the ones, the chances are the ones you'll get cast in, because you're going to know who this character is. I call it a voicinality. It's not just a voice, it's a person. I came up with that. I know. I think
Copyrighted, quick.
I don't know if I put it in the Urban Dictionary or not yet. I should, but I know anyhow, yeah, thank you
That's
very
your
much.
book, right?
But
Finding Your Voicinality.
Finding Your Voicinality.
There it is.
But you know what? We didn't learn, people didn't necessarily have to tell us things, but me being around those people, just watching them.
Through osmosis.
Yeah, I mean, you learn on the job. That's why when I coach, I don't like to give a lot of lectures. I go, read it, and I'll give you some feedback.
Thank you so much. And that is going to be our time. Bradley, Katie, thank you for hanging out. So before we go, if you guys want to gather up by the stage area, we're going to take a little stage selfie here,
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe
little
I'll
photo
put it
to
on the
commemorate
Tell
this
Ya Later
occasion.
show. Yeah.
So gather up here by the stage underneath this lighting.